Hey guys, so Own Your Happy today is with Emma Jensen. And I love Emma so much. We met in December and I feel like I've known Emma for years in other ways because when we connect in any way, like conversation is always just so easy and I feel like it would just go on for hours. We've been chatting for almost an hour now before we push record and I was like, we got to push record because I will continue on. Emma is one of the most fascinating people I have ever met. You just have the most diverse background. She's an animal communicator and a human design expert. Like amazing. And your brain, like the knowledge that's in your brain, sometimes I'm just like, tell me more. You're so fascinating. And so we became Facebook friends after we met each other. And then she posted that she worked at the White House as Secret Service.
Yeah.
And to picture the sweet, quiet Emma that I knew in a like carrying gun capacity was just like to me. And I also knew that you worked for corporate Apple, and I think you said you worked for Nike as well. So you're just like, oh, there's just this broad array of you that I'm like, I always learn something. And I'm like, are you 70? How did you do all of these things? But we are going to talk a lot about human design today, just so you guys know for the episode. And you did a reading for me. I want to say it was maybe in January, February. It was a while ago. And there are certain pieces that she told me that have just stuck with me so much. And when I follow them, I feel so stinking good. And we were just talking about this of sometimes it's good to follow up afterwards to learn even more because human design is so broad and there's so much information that I had looked at it before even you had done your reading on me. Or is that what you call it?
A reading, yeah.
Yeah. And I had shut it right down because I was like, that's too much information. I saw the not little chart. I saw the chart the very first time I looked into it and I was like, way too much information, overwhelm, overload. I am not looking into that at all. That's probably cool for somebody else. And then Emma came into my life and made it like sound simple. And it was like, perfect. I am supposed to learn about this a little bit. And so how do you explain human design? Because I've tried to explain it to some people that have no idea about it. And it's like, I'm butchering this completely. It has to do with your birth date, where you were born, when you were born, and who you are as a human, essentially.
Those are all pieces, yes. Yeah, so human design, it is kind of a difficult thing to explain because it's so layered and it's so kind of complex in the sense of how much it does explain you. But I like to tell people it's like the blueprint of who you are. It's the who you are underneath all of the layers of conditioning that we have from childhood, from parents and caretakers, family, friends, society, ourselves.
Yep.
That tells us, no, this is actually who you are and what you're meant to lean into. So human design for me, when I learned about myself, gave me the permission and licensing to be me and not to
want
be.
to pause for a second so that can just sink in. It gave you the permission to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so powerful for people to learn.
Yes. Like in your experience with it is so common. And I had a very similar experience too when a coach first brought it to me. And when she brought it to me, like she was bringing it as she was learning it. So it was still kind of complicated for her. So I was like, wait, I'm what? Like, what is this? I don't understand. She's like, I don't know. Like, let me read this book and I'll get back to you. And your experience with it is super common because there's a lot of stuff on your chart, right? So it takes your birth date, time, and location because human design is a combination of 4 modalities of astrology, which is why we need all of those things. And then the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and the chakra system. So it kind of pulls from all of these different places, which is why it can be super complicated because, right, there's this like body graph with different shapes in it, and there's these colors and lines, and then there's numbers, and there's these like shapes, and like I think they're mean planets, but I'm not sure. And then there's like these words about different things. Like I don't understand. Like there's so much here. And
Yeah.
so it can be so easy to be like, nope, like I'm good. No, thank you. Like, no.
Yeah.
Or when somebody starts explaining it to you, to also kind of shut down, because it's like, whoa, it can be an overload of information. Because, right, like we had two, I doubt they were only 1 hour, but two, we'll
No,
say
I don't
two
think
1 hour sessions.
Yeah.
And we still didn't even like get into everything.
No, not even
And
close. Like I feel
yeah,
like I could talk to you for 20 hours and just peel back more layers
totally.
for myself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And the more that you hear about it, the more that you're able to really kind of step into it more and embody it, and then be able to actually see it for yourself,
Yeah.
so that you can start to see the conditioning
Yeah.
and to start trusting yourself for embodying it and being like, okay, maybe I will try this and like kind of see what happens and let things play out. Because human design is an experiment. This is how, like, this is the human design language, is that's kind of how they explain it. It's an experiment. It's not a belief system. It's not like something we worship or anything. It's a tool, just
Yeah.
like anything else, to understand ourselves better and to understand like where we're kind of meant to go.
Mhm.
So if we can give it, a week, 2 weeks, a month, and just say, okay, I'm going to try being a manifesting generator, a projector, or whatever, and see what
Yeah.
happens. And then after that time, if I have seen that there's, benefit in this, like, okay, cool, I'm going to continue.
Yeah.
And if I've seen that there's no benefit, then I can just go back to living my life how I was doing it before anyway. Like no skin off your back, nothing like terrible has happened.
Yeah.
So it's just this like new way of getting to be. And for me, it was super freeing, because I got to stop listening to what everybody else was telling me I'm supposed to do, or I should do, or I need to
Uh-huh.
do, and got to listen to me and what resonated with me, and then understand, oh, that's why it doesn't resonate with me. Okay, cool. Like that makes sense. I'm going to go do it my way
Yeah.
and see what happens. And so that's
It's
been really
just,
cool.
it's so cool. And I think until people, I highly encourage people to reach out to you. I highly encourage people to look into what your human design is and just learn even a little bit about it. If it feels really overwhelming, like it did for me, um, and then keep growing on it and
Yeah.
allowing more of it, because the more you kind of study the details of the blueprint, you're just like, wow, that's really fascinating. That really makes sense. And it's freeing. It really is like breaking chains off. And sometimes for me too, I will say that I wasn't ready to let go of all the chains.
Mm-hmm.
That felt really scary.
Totally.
So some of us just have to take like one chain at a time off, then we start to float.
And it's not about changing everything right now. Like,
Yes.
right. So if I can explain a little bit about what a projector is. A projector, so there's different types within human design. There's
Yes.
5 different types that you can be a
There's
projector.
5.
Yeah. So there's a projector,
Yeah.
manifesting generator, which is what you are,
Yeah.
a generator, manifester, and reflector.
Reflector. Okay. Yeah.
So reflectors are the least common. They're the most rare. They're only 1% of the population. And
Okay.
then manifestors are like 9-ish% of the population. Projectors are 20.
Okay.
Manifesting generators and generators are about 35% each. So together they're about 70%. And I lump them together because they're more similar. Manifesting generators are kind of like a flavor
Yeah.
of a generator, but they're kind of a mixture of a manifestor and a generator together. And when you are a manifesting generator, you can be more manifestor of a
Mhm.
manifesting generator or more generator. And
Mhm.
it just depends on like what centers are connected essentially. And I don't want to like completely overwhelm people of like, what does all that
It's okay.
verbiage mean?
Some people will know some about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So if people want to know, to understand if you're more of a manifestor, manifesting generator, you look at your body graph and
Mhm.
you look to see if your sacral center is connected with a channel to your throat. And if it's connected, that means you're more of a manifestor. And if it's not, then you're more of a generator. So it's like leaning more into the generator, or just understanding that you have these two different energies kind of
Yeah.
happening in you, that you're meant to allow both to happen, but they're different. and one's really quick and one's not quite as quick, but not slow. But when you don't necessarily understand them, it can be really kind of destabilizing to feel them and not really understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that are manifesting generators and aren't, I guess, like harnessing the energy in a way that is fulfilling to them can have a lot of thyroid issues. And that's
I forgot about that.
yeah. So it's interesting. Like everything's kind of connected to different things. And I know I was going to talk about a projector, and I can't remember what I was going to say.
That's okay. Because are you a projector?
I'm a projector. Yeah.
That's what yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. So projectors are here to guide, and projectors are different from the other types in the sense that they're really good at seeing into other people, which can take a lot of energy from them. And therefore they can get really burnt out if they work in a way that is more traditional. And I put that in quotes, traditional to the world. So the 9-to-5 job where you're really like using your gifts and abilities all day long is a great recipe for you to burn yourself out. Maybe quickly, maybe not quickly, but in a way that if you're a projector, you're probably going to resonate with. And so when I learned that, like things started to click into place, but it did take me a while.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, first of all, I was like, but why do I have to be a projector? I want to be the one with all the energy. I don't want to be the one that gets burnt out really like easily. And I have to operate in this other way that's like so foreign to me. Yes. And all of this messaging says you're not successful if you're not working super hard, if you're not pushing, if you're not putting in all these long hours, like you're never going to be successful. And it's like, oh, but my type saying that I'm actually not meant to put in a bunch of hours in like doing my gifts in that kind of way. So like, how can I be successful or how can I have the life that I want to have if I have to operate it in this like very different way?
Such a foreign way compared to what we've been raised to think is the way to be successful as a person.
Exactly. And so I had so much resistance to it, but once I started leaning into it, the magic started to happen. And so now, like I've had all these corporate jobs that are, at these companies that are very high performing and therefore expect their people to be very high performing and putting in all these hours. And at Apple, I was traveling and like doing all these things. And finally I was like, okay, this isn't serving me. It's, I love the people there and I loved what I was doing, but it was just too much for what like I'm capable to do. And knowing all the health issues I've had in the past, if I were to allow myself to stay in such an environment, all these health issues were going to come back.
Can we just commend you in that, the bravery that took, I'm sure. Like, how do you, I don't know what your parents do for a living, but I'm going to assume that they're successful, achiever, do well in life in many capacities is how I feel. And so as their daughter to come and be like, well, I built myself up corporately. And I'm sure that like, the Secret Service things just like floors me still. Like you've done all of these things and you've worked for these big corporations and you're doing well and you're traveling and you come home and you say, I'm going to quit my job to speak to animals and learn astrology.
Yeah.
How was that received?
Yeah. So this is like, so much part of the process. So yeah, my dad was a cop his whole career.
Yeah.
So hello. And then my mom was a nurse in the trauma ICU. My mom's a manifesting generator.
Okay.
But we don't know what my dad is because we don't have his birth time. And he hasn't looked it up. So like we haven't figured it out. I have ideas, but I'm not
sure you do. Yeah.
So many ideas. I'm like, oh, you could be this and you could be that. But definitely grew up in like a very high performing, high achieving, like even when I was in my other jobs, if I needed to work late or I was, going on this trip or whatever, and I needed them to watch my dog, that was really seen more as like a positive of like, oh, you're putting in all these hours, you're going in on the weekend, like you're so, desired and like,
Good job.
Yeah. And like no knock on them. Like that's just the world that
not at all.
Like when you're putting in all these hours, like you're doing it, like you're crushing it, like you're doing all this stuff, even when I was like, but I don't want to, like this
Yeah.
doesn't feel good, and all of that stuff. So the thing for me was, while I was at Apple, which is where I was really meant to go because it gave me the means to be
Yep.
able to dive into myself. I left Nike in a very rock bottomy place. Like,
Yeah.
they essentially asked me to leave.
Yeah.
It was it was just a bad situation for everybody involved. But what needed to happen? I had been wanting to leave, but had people telling me, you can't leave until you know where you're going. But
Yep.
I didn't know where to go because I was so stressed and like burnt out and all these things that I couldn't see clearly.
Yes.
And so I like ended up going, long story short, I'm at Apple. They're giving me, that allows me the means to dive into myself and to really get to understand myself. And as I'm going through that process, I'm starting to allow my authenticness to come out and play, essentially, and to not be so ashamed of it and
Cool.
to share it with people, right? I'm working at a company that is full of engineers and is very like logical and very, you know, can be black and white. And not that everybody's like that there,
No.
but a lot of my colleagues were, you know, former military, former law enforcement, which that's also like a whole different kind of environment too.
Yep.
But the more that I started to own me and share whatever I was doing, like I told them about human design. I was telling them about like different programs I was doing or retreats I was going to. Like if they asked me, like I would share.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where it was really uncomfortable at first. And I would do it with my family too, because I would start sharing stuff online too. And it was really uncomfortable. There were like some questions at the beginning or some jokes or like whatever, you know, made at my expense and da 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 da. But by the time that I left, not only were my parents like, well, yeah, that makes sense, but also the my coworkers, like it got to a point where they were seeking me out for the woo-woo-ness.
Love
I
it.
wanted to know more. Like I became that person. And when I put in my notice and when I started telling people that I was leaving to pursue, and I told them, like,
Yeah.
or I said that to pursue like, you know, a passion or whatever. And if they asked me, I would tell them animal communication and healing, which
Yeah.
again is like real woo-woo at like a company, right?
Yes.
Everybody, not one person put me down. Not one person questioned me. Everybody was so supportive. And they're like, oh my, like, I'm mad that you're leaving, but I can't be mad because you're going after something that like you're so passionate
I
about that
love
like I'm
it.
just so excited for you. So it was such a cool experience. And it was such a reminder that the more that we can embody and become okay with ourselves, the more that everybody becomes okay with it too. But the more that we're like shameful of it or we feel like we need to hide it,
Hide in the closet.
yeah, the more people that are going to come out and like when you maybe say something like make you feel weird about it, which then makes you want to go back in. But the more we can just stand in it and be like, yep, I'm the woo-woo person on the team. Who wants to know about herbal infusions? Or like, who wants to know about like this thing that I'm doing this week or whatever, like whatever the thing is.
Yes.
They're just like, yeah, cool. Like, that's who you are. And, oh, you communicate with animals? Cool. Like, do you want to talk to my dog? Like, it was just really,
Which I love it. Isn't
yeah.
that a piece of projector too, that if you are asked,
Mhm.
then that's when you share? Or did I just make that up? Isn't there a piece
No.
to projectors
Yeah.
with that? Yeah.
Yeah, you're 1,000% correct. So every type has a strategy, and the strategy is how we kind of like open up things, how we energetically open up the space for things to flow easily. And
Okay.
for a projector, it's waiting for the invitation, which for every projector is probably like the hardest thing to do because, right, we can see people so clearly. So it's like we want to give them,
what the answer is.
yeah, like I want to tell you what to do. It's so clear. Why can't you do it? Why can't you see it? Like, come on. But if we don't wait for them to ask us,
Yeah.
we don't wait for them to recognize that we have something to share. So maybe they say like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
But really they don't care. They just feel like they have to ask you or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't deserve our guidance. But if they are asking because they really want to know, then that's when we can share it and they're able to receive it to then implement it. But if we just share what we're thinking without anybody asking, it's met with resistance, met with people potentially getting upset, calling you bossy or pushy or know-it-all, or
Yeah.
they just don't hear it. And I've definitely had experiences where I've
That
given
would be
people advice.
so frustrating.
Yeah. And then, a week or 2 weeks later, they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, so-and-so gave me the best advice. And I'm like,
I just gave that to
me. Like,
you.
I gave that to you 2 weeks ago. They're like, no, you didn't. And I'm like, I can literally tell you exactly what happened for when I gave you that advice. And they're like, oh, I don't remember. And I'm like, and now I'm able to laugh at it because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like it makes so much sense. Or like I'll share stuff and I'm like, I just shared that unsolicited. So like it's totally cool if you don't take it.
Yeah.
I just felt like I really needed to share it. And I didn't wait for you to invite me. And I didn't invite myself into it either. I just like blurted it out.
Yeah.
So yes, like every type has their strategy. And it's so important for us to follow it because that's how we find kind of that ease within our life.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be really difficult getting there, right? So like a manifesting generator
Yeah.
and a generator, your strategy is to respond. So you still have to wait, but you don't have to wait as long as a projector does of like, okay, like who's going to ask me? Like I
Yeah.
can see it so clearly, like please somebody ask me. But for a generator and a manifesting generator, it's just all about responding. It's allowing that thing that's in front of you to come to you, whether it's an opportunity, it's a person, it's could literally be anything. It could be an idea about what to do. It also could be like,
This helped me so much in business when you told me this, for content creation,
yeah,
because I was always wanting to come up with the next thing and wanting to, what am I going to share? What am I going to share? What am I going to share? And I feel like, I've done a few things over the last 20 years of my life too. And so I feel like I have a lot of things to share, but what to share. And when you told me about that, I was like, oh, I feel so much better, because I would like to scroll blogs, or I would like to scroll Pinterest, or I would like to scroll social media in some capacities, and just kind of like be like, what do I want to talk about today? And when you said that to me, I was like, oh, I can do that. And that's not a bad thing. It actually like allows me to be like, yeah, that is what I want to talk about.
yeah, exactly. Like you have a visceral response within your body that
Mm-hmm.
tells you yes or no. And it can be shut down super early. And so once we get back in touch with it of what that feels like or how that shows up for you, which can be a feeling, it can be, like there's a movement where maybe you sit up straighter, or you just say like yes or uh-huh, or like yes, I want to do that, or that sounds really fun, or the opposite of whatever all of those things would be too.
Yeah.
Once we get back in touch with that, that's what leads you down your path.
Mm.
That's what tells you, yes, do this. No, don't do this. So when you're pulling in all of these like people and opportunities and synchronicities and things that are coming at you that you need to decide yes or no for,
Yeah.
that's what you use. You don't use your head. You use your body to tell you, yes, do this. No, don't do that. And don't let your brain get in touch, like get involved, because your brain's going to probably put you down a path that you're not supposed to go on, right?
Mine will just go on and on and on with all the scenarios,
Yeah.
all the things that could happen. Yeah.
And it's letting go of needing to have that and just letting your body say like, yes, and
Yeah.
trusting it, which is difficult. Trust me, I understand. Like trust is really difficult. But once you feel the yes, then you probably can put your rationalizations to it of like, oh, well, yeah, like it makes sense. Yes, because like these reasons here,
Yeah.
or whatever the thing, or it's a no because like, oh, I can see that, maybe it could go a wrong way, or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
You can probably put the reasons to it once you get the answer, but it's not the other way around. You let the answer come to you, and then you're going to then you can put your reasons to
I
it.
have a hard question for you.
Yeah.
Or I feel like it's a hard question, because I struggled with this for a long time. Gut feelings, heart feelings, all of visceral response, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people in that
Mm-hmm.
respect? Because I fought that for a long time, that I didn't know. And I think I was just really cluttered, to be honest. I wouldn't allow myself the space and quiet and all of that, because she told me today, part of my design is I like to go, go, go. And I was like, yeah, I do like to go, go, go. But I also, if anybody knows me, I like to meditate and have the space and the quiet, which is also still a go, go.
Yeah.
So it just depends what you look at it as. But what would you say to people for that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things, right? So the first one, especially when you're a manifesting generator or generator, right? So what people to get the visceral response, these are the only people that get this response, are manifesting generators.
Oh, okay.
Projectors don't get it, manifestors don't get it, and reflectors don't get it.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys.
What?
I'm sorry, you guys, that you don't get it.
I know, trust me too. I was talking about this yesterday. I'm like, it must feel so nice that you just have this like built in yes, no, like that just tells you so clearly, like yes or no. Like I don't have that. I have like a more abstract way that I have to kind of like figure my stuff out, which is great and is perfect for me.
Now that you've figured it out.
Yeah, but like it's just built in. Like it just feels so cool. So the first thing is getting really clear on what are the things that you've committed your energy to in your life. What are all those different things? And then once you go through those, or once you have them listed, what are the ones that are actually a yes, the ones you actually want to do, and what are the ones that you said yes to that were actually a no, that you actually don't really want to do, you feel obligated, maybe you said yes because you felt like you should, or like you're supposed to want to do that, or it's gonna, like people say it's gonna bring you to this point in your business or whatever, so you're like, okay, I'll do it. I don't really want to. It doesn't really bring me energy when I'm doing it. I feel more depleted after. Maybe I feel frustrated when I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What are all those things? Because if you have so many no's that you've said yes to, that's clogging up your space,
Yeah.
it can be difficult to reignite this feeling within you, because there's no space for it to really happen, because you're taking up that space with all these other things.
So I look at it like a cup, like how I say we need to fill our cup first and what's in your cup runs over, right? But just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So essentially, if I have all of the no's that I've said to you that have filled that cup, I don't have room for any yeses.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So if you have, like, if you're looking at your cup, you're looking at your plate and it's super full,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it are no's. Like a lot of the things
I've got a lot of no's still. We all got a lot of no's.
a lot of it's like, I don't really like it. It doesn't bring me energy. It brings more frustration. Those are the things that you now need to create an exit plan for. Because if you're clogging your space with no's,
Yeah.
yeses cannot come through.
No, it makes sense.
And just because you have stuff coming at you, it doesn't make it an automatic yes. So I know there's like a lot of messaging I've seen where it's like, oh, well, if it's in front of you, then like it must be a sign, or it's like something that, you know, you called it in. So like it's a yes. And as much as I would love the universe to work like that, it doesn't. Like I like to have very frank conversations with the universe also, because the universe is gonna test us. So if we
start deciphering, I think so too. Some of those are actually obstacles. I call them obstacles. You call them no's.
Yeah.
That are like a test.
Yeah.
Of like, is that right?
Yeah. The universe is testing you to see if you actually are gonna walk the talk that you're talking.
Yeah.
So if you're like, yeah, no, like I want to have this dream life and I want to call in like all of this like money and these clients, and like if you have a bad money mind, or not a bad money mind, but you're just more in scarcity,
yeah,
the universe is going to give you tests to see like, okay, like where's your self-worth in this? Do you feel worthy of accepting money? Or like, do you feel like you actually can call this in, that you deserve it?
Yep.
And the universe is gonna give you things that maybe are like super clear or like super subtle for you to see, to basically see like, okay, you say you want it, but do you actually want it? Are you going to do the work to actually get it? Because just because it's in front of you doesn't make it a yes.
Yes.
It could very much be a no. You probably get more no's.
Like speaking my first year and a half in business for sure, because it was just like, well, one part of my chart is that I have to do what I love, but I would look at all these strategies. I took so many programs for everybody else's strategies and how I should grow a business and what online should look like.
Yeah.
And it was like banging my head against a wall. It was not, there were moments that felt good for sure, but it was like, why am I not getting ahead? Why am I not getting ahead? And the worthiness piece was totally in there too, which I think is for many people. Oh, I love it.
Oh, so much. Okay, so that's step one. So
Yeah.
get clear on how much space do you actually have.
Yeah.
Bring in things for you to respond to. Get rid of the things that are no's, or at least create the exit plan for them. Like I don't tell people like, oh, well, get rid of all your no's now, because that can be like super unrealistic, right? So like, what are the things and how can you get out of them? And then start implementing that. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing, again, going back to having a frank conversation with the universe or God or, you know, whatever you
call it.
Whatever you call it. I would say, hey, God, hey, universe, whatever. So I'm learning that, you know, I'm a manifesting generator. Cool. Makes sense. I get it. I understand that my strategy is to respond, and then I get this visceral response. But I don't get that visceral response. So I just want you to know I'm open to it. I want to reignite it.
Yes.
And I'm going to do my part, but I need you to do your part too. So because like this is new and I'm like relearning what it is.
Yeah.
Make it really loud. Make it really strong so that I really understand what it feels like or how it shows up for me.
Yeah.
And then after that is when especially when you're like just learning how to do this, the best way to get it is, right, you need something to respond to. So if you're just asking yourself, you're not really responding, you're really just initiating it. So it's really having somebody else ask you yes or no questions or multiple choice type of questions. Manifesting generators do not do well with open-ended questions. So we need to stop asking.
Another aha in my life and a relationship changer for me and my husband.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like we have to stop asking you open-ended questions because that's not how you operate.
No.
The rest of us can answer open-ended questions. Maybe we tell ourselves we can't because there's lots of fear there of like, are they going to judge me for what I say or whatever? But we're not limited by what our design is to answer open-ended questions like generators and manifesting generators are for the things that they want. So it's writing out things when you're just learning, right? Writing out things that you know are like a really big yes, like something that you love.
Yep.
And things that are big no's that, you know, like your body, like, you know, it's going to give you the response so that you can start to learn what are the yeses. So like if you love dogs and you hate rats, like ask yourself the question, do you love dogs? It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
How it is.
And then see what happens. Do you feel something? Do you like say something? Do you straighten up? Do you kind of contract? Just start to get really curious about what happens when these questions are asked to you. I have a generator friend who she will, on her phone, record a bunch of questions and then play it back to herself. And that works for her.
Yeah.
And so it's learning what works for you too. And that could maybe not work for somebody right at the beginning because it's not coming at them in the same way as it would be if somebody was asking them.
Yeah.
So it's just learning and playing around with and getting really curious of like, how does this work for me? Mm-hmm. And then start doing it and not just think about it, but actually do it, right? Yeah. We can get so stuck in just the planning part of it that we don't actually do it. And then we're not actually learning anything because we're like, oh, well, I feel like if I were to say, do I love dogs, that, you know, my body would light up. Yeah. But maybe your response is you say, uh-huh. Or you.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Like you can't think your way into what your response is, right? Like that's not how it works. Your response is just whatever your response is. And for manifesting generators, you may find that your response is more in some kind of movement than it is just a physical response. Whereas for generators, it most likely will show up more as a physical response or words. Yeah. And manifesting generators may like make a movement towards something or away from something.
So like even like a lean in, like you mean a legit movement.
Yeah, legit.
So when I go like this all the time on my computer, that's part of my human design. Because there are
Exactly.
times
Say
like
that
while
again.
I'm talking to people that I'm like, I just want to get closer
Yeah.
to this situation. And so that would be a yes to me, I think. I'm going to dive into that.
Yeah, it for sure could be a yes. It's just getting curious and okay, the next time you do that, having the awareness of, okay, what just happened?
Yes, why am I
What did they
leaving?
just say? And why did I decide to like lean in towards them closer?
Yeah,
And maybe you find that you lean away from people sometimes too.
I do.
And then it's learning, okay, why did I do that? Or like what just happened before I did that? And
Yes.
it's just getting
Thank
curious.
you, COVID, for that, actually, because I spend so much more time on my computer on Zoom that I do know, like, I almost want to go back and watch all my recordings of, like, when am I doing these things? Because I
Yeah,
do them all of the time. And then there's a neutral place, too.
totally. And
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's just getting curious about how does it work for you?
Yeah.
We're not all the same.
No.
Everybody's chart is unique and specific to them. Not every manifesting generator is the same
Yeah.
because right, so there's the type, there's strategy, there's not self-name, there's profile, there's incarnation cross, there's inner authority. There's so many different things. And if you think of, I know it can be like so overwhelming. But if you think of astrology, right? You have your sun sign, you have your moon and your rising,
Yeah.
meaning that every Aries who's like a sun within Aries, they don't have the same moon. They
Right.
don't have the same rising. And those things give flavor to that sun.
Yeah.
And so your energy type is kind of like your sun. It's kind of like your first entry point into human design. Whereas like your inner authority and your profile would be those things that are giving you different flavor. Before you even get into your chart with the centers and all of that stuff, like your strategy is always the same for every energy type. So projectors are, it's always going to be wait for the invitation. Manifesting generators and generators is always to respond. Manifestors is always to inform. And reflectors are special. Their strategy is kind of like their authority in the sense that it's waiting a lunar cycle. So they have the most waiting out of everybody.
Okay, so if anybody's a reflector, please message me because I actually want to meet a reflector. Do you
Yeah.
know a reflector?
I don't know one personally, but I know one of my friends, her son's a reflector.
Interesting.
Yeah. They're so special.
Yeah, that's why like I want to get to know you. And you probably
Yeah.
will message me now because it's probably coming across kind of creepily, but like I really want to be a fly on the wall of what that
It's
looks
not
like for
creepy.
you because it is so special.
Yeah. Reflectors are meant to be in the center of the tribe. They're kind of like the canary
Oh,
of the types in the
yeah,
sense that they're meant to show us through how they're doing,
yeah,
how we're doing as a collective. So they're meant to be at the center of the tribe, showing us how well or how bad we're doing. So if they're pulling away from the tribe, then we're probably not doing very well as like a whole, or if they're sick or whatever, or if they're just very like maybe more depressed or disappointed or like things like that, not like super vibrant and excited and whatever.
yeah.
When they're in the middle and they're, you know, super full of life and like there's surprise and there's variety and all of this, like then we're doing so well as a tribe.
Mm.
So it's like their role is just so important and so cool that they're so special. But you know,
Yeah,
we're all so different and they live in a world of the majority of them being like super energized and super like working long hours and expecting people to be able to do that too. I mean, one of my
you should not marry one probably then, hey?
who
You as a projector
like a generator or a manifesting generator.
with the like working long hours versus
Yeah.
yeah.
No, no, we can marry any type. We can be in a
Look at
relationship.
me just adding another layer to this.
Yeah.
So
We
like
can be
what's your sign? Who do you marry?
oh my gosh, like I ask so many. I'm like, do you know what your human design is? Not like people I date, just like
Oh,
anybody.
yeah. Yeah.
Want to know about you. No, so any type can marry any type. There's no like you're more compatible if you're with this type than with this type. It's more of just understanding the type that you're with so that you can both be uplifted in a way that feels most supportive to you specifically, and also so that the other person understands how to support you, and
Yeah.
that if you're asking for space it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or that you're mad at them or anything. It's just that you need it specifically for you. So if I were to marry a manifesting generator or generator and we're like sleeping together all the time, it would just really depend, because sleep is so important for a projector. Like, we need our rest. And because we have an open sacral, whereas you have a defined sacral, which is where that sustainable energy comes from. I call it literally your generator. Like,
Yeah.
you feed it fuel. And if you feed it the right fuel, it creates all of this like amazing energy. And if you feed it the wrong fuel, which is like things that you don't love and that are no's,
Yeah.
then it depletes you of energy. And it can be depleting of energy to other people too. At least that's my experience as a projector,
Yeah.
that I can, when I'm around different generators and manifesting generators, I can be like, ooh, like you're like totally feeding your generator with like all the great things. Like, can I have more of that? Or I'm like, ooh, how can I block your energy from me? Because I want nothing to do with this. Like, this does not feel good. So
Yeah.
that just gives me information too of like who I'm around. And it's just really interesting. But it's just understanding each other. So a lot of the verbiage out there says, you know, if you're a projector and you're with somebody with a defined sacral, that every couple days or, you know, a couple days or week out of the month or whatever, is sleeping alone or not sleeping together with your person that has a defined sacral, or, you know, having one person go to bed earlier than the other person, so that you just have time for your sacral to like get out all of that extra energy that you're just not meant to have consistently. And so it's just finding what works for you guys. And maybe like you love sleeping together and it's just that you find alone time during the day where you're able to like get all that out and that works for you. Or you take a nap every day and like that, you find what works for you and your partner and not allow the verbiage to tell you that this is how you have to be.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's just like anything else. You take what resonates and what works for you and you make it work for you. You don't make yourself work for it. You don't put yourself, it's not
I
here
want
to
everybody to hear that for like lesson of life. Human design, yes, but everything in life. Don't put yourself in the belief system that it has to be that exact way because somebody else said it was. Make it work for you.
Exactly. Human design is here to let you out of the box and like create your own life for whatever that works for you, and not to put you in a box. And if you feel like it's putting you in a box, then reach out to somebody, because there may be something that you are reading and you're taking and you're thinking that you have to do it a certain way, when in reality, it's here to set you free and to give yourself the permission and licensing to be who you're meant to be in the way that feels most supportive to you. But if you have all of these layers of conditioning, it can be really difficult. Like, I'm still having, which I'm realizing now because I was kind of getting down on myself about it before.
Yeah.
I'm still decompressing from being burnt out and from working in a corporate world and a government world for, you know, I don't know how many years it was. We'll say 10 years. I don't know. That I look at my work day, because I have it set up for that works for me and that feels supportive to me. And I might get to the end of a day and be like, why am I so tired? Like, I had 3 calls today, or I had 2 calls today, like, or I connected in with an animal and I did a human design session. Like, I shouldn't be this tired. And when you start saying words like I shouldn't be, or why is this happening, or I'm supposed to be this, these are all key words for you to take a step back and be like, okay, why do I feel this way? Because these are words that aren't supposed to be really in our language. And that if we're saying I should be, or I'm not supposed to feel this way, then that's like a key of there's some conditioning there that I'm meant to decondition from. So what's the awareness? And then how can I allow myself to be more of who I am and realize, oh, cool. Okay. Got it. Like, I thought at this point I should be totally like done and decompressed and like re-energized from that. But when you look at it, you're like, okay, that was how many years of my life, that was how, and then before that in like schooling and working and all the stuff even before that.
Close to your whole life, probably.
Totally. And then look like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm going to give myself more compassion and grace.
Yeah.
And give myself more rest because that's what I'm feeling. I'm not going to go have another cup of coffee and push through because I'm not going to do anything that's valuable. But if I take a 20-minute nap right now, instead of going getting a cup of coffee and then forcing the rest of my day, if I take a 20-minute nap, I'm going to be so much more productive or so much more energized or so much more everything else than if I push through it because I'm supposed to, or because my work day is not over yet. And I'm not allowed to get up and like go do something different or rest or whatever and then feel guilty about it. There's so much deconditioning that has to happen that once we can start catching ourselves in the conditioning, the deconditioning can happen a little bit faster. But like there's so many words. Human design doesn't necessarily give you the tools or the steps to decondition. It tells you who you are. It brings awareness to the conditioning. And some people, that's all they need. They just need to know like, oh, got it. Like, this is who I am. Cool. Like, thank you. And then they can decondition no problem. Yeah. But then there's some of us that like need a lot of extra help. I'm for sure one of them. Like, I have a lot of ingrained beliefs. I've like grabbed onto a lot of what other people have said. This is how it's supposed to work or how it's meant to work or whatever. Yeah. And so I find that I also need to use other tools or coaches and therapists and different people to help me then decondition from all of these beliefs that I know are not serving me because they've led to like so many different things that were not, like, didn't feel good and are opposite of what does feel good. So it's just knowing too that, like, I don't know if anybody's thinking this, but human design isn't going to like automatically decondition you, that there's still that extra work that we have to do. Yes. Whether it's just bringing awareness to it in the moment for when we're starting to feel it, or it's going the extra mile or the extra step and finding coaches and programs and people that can help us decondition even more, even faster.
It's about the work that comes along with it. It's not about just having the knowledge. Like, I compare it to, for a long time in my personal development journey, I would just read all the books like as fast as I could. I was like, running book clubs, party book clubs, in what's my next personal development book? I'm just running through it, not doing a damn thing out of any book, just literally like flying through them. And so to me, that's how I kind of look at human design. It's what you're going to do with it and keep it in the forefront of your mind when you are, being triggered or having awarenesses or whatever words are good for you around that. I think that's a major part of it.
Yes, so much. And I've done the same thing of like, oh, well, if I read enough, or if I listen to enough books, or if I join enough coaching programs or whatever, like, I'll just be fixed. Like,
or meditate enough.
Yeah.
Or journal enough.
Totally. Like, it'll just fix it all. And for some people that does work. And like, just, if that is you, like, really celebrate that, because that is so cool. Like, and
you're so lucky and you probably have no idea.
Yeah. And it's not everybody's experience. And one of the things I love about human design and learning about the different types and just all the different centers and all the things is that it not only gave me compassion for myself, but it gave me compassion for everybody else. Like, oh, got it. Okay. So like, I'm different. Not everybody can do what I can do or see things the way that I can see them or whatever. Yeah. And the same goes for the person next to me. Like, we're different, whether they're, a different type, or even if they're a projector, but they have different stuff going on in their chart. None of us have the same chart. Maybe like people like identical, like twins that are born at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Probably have the same chart. Yeah. But other than that, like, the most of us like don't have the same chart. We have different gates, different centers, different profiles, different incarnation crosses, like so many different things. And the fact that it's given me so much more compassion for me and for others, it's been so helpful and easy to now like be able to have like conversations with people and be like, oh, got it. Like, yeah, we're different. Cool. Great. Like, we don't operate the same way. You're making fun of me because I'm going to bed at 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. Cool. Well, you generator, you go have fun with your energy. Like, I'm going to go to sleep and I do not feel bad about it. So if you need to make comments about it, cool.
Yeah.
But I know me and know that this is what I need to feel the best tomorrow. So I'm
Okay,
going to,
so I have a question there because I'm a manifesting generator
yeah,
slash generator, I believe you called me.
you're a manifesting generator.
Manifest generator. Okay. I like to go to bed at 9 o'clock too. I want to be a projector. As you're talking there, I'm like, I like to go to bed early.
So just because you're a manifesting generator doesn't mean that you want to go to bed late.
Okay.
So
Have extra energy because sometimes I feel like I don't have all the energy that some people would like me to, which is probably more of it now that I say that out loud to you. That I'm probably doing more shoulds than want tos is probably more of the energy thing. I know this look from you now.
yeah,
Yes, that's exactly
you're
what
full
that was.
circle. It's perfect. Yeah. So if you are a manifesting generator or a generator,
Yeah.
you're sitting here being like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, I do not have the energy that she's talking about. Like, what the F? Then it's going back to that list of your yeses and your nos because you're pouring your energy into nos.
Okay, my energy, let's just get a session right on here. My energy wants to live on an island by myself. I love
Yeah,
people, but I want to live by myself completely with my children. What's two?
that's your profile. Yes. So just because you have energy doesn't mean you want to be around people, right? So if you have energy
Uh,
doesn't make you an extrovert. If you
okay,
don't
so
have
that's
energy,
my conditioning.
it doesn't make you an introvert. It just makes you that you have sustainable energy or you don't.
Yeah.
And so your profile, which is like your personality,
Okay.
have a 2 in your profile, which is the first number, and the first number is how you see yourself. So your 2 is called the hermit.
I
And
forgot that. That's right.
in the hermit, when it's doing its thing, when it's doing its process, when it's using its gifts, whatever that is, wants to be alone, doesn't want to be disturbed.
I
So
can't
if
believe
you
I
have a,
forgot that.
yeah, if you have a
This
2
is
in your
why you
profile,
have to get a reading by Emma, guys. And then you have to do a follow. We were just talking about how important the follow-ups are,
yeah,
even like months after, because there's pieces that you don't stick with you because you work on. For me, it was deconditioning different areas.
totally.
But now it's like I'm more open to hearing even more. But yeah, the hermit part is me. That's
Yeah. And there's so much, like, right, there's so much information in those 2 sessions
yes.
that it's not all going to integrate or it's not all going to land where that you're like moving now forward with knowing like, oh, that's this, like that's happening right now. Just
Yeah.
like with anything in life, right? If you don't study it, if you don't come back to it, it kind of will like fall to the wayside until somebody reminds you about it and you're like, oh, right. She did say that. Oh, right. Okay. I gotta,
I'm gonna see if I can get a hermit crab for my desk.
yeah. Right. So if you have a 2 in your profile, then, and you're like, but I don't really know. So the 2, which is the hermit has inherent gifts that come to the surface when you are doing your thing. When you're alone and you're like self-absorbed in your own process, these
Yeah.
gifts will come to the surface. So they're usually things that come to the surface later in life, which for me, as I'm saying this is like, is so obvious. My animal communication is one of my hermit gifts.
Yeah.
And I'm just putting that together now, which is like incredible.
Yes.
But you're like, but I don't know what those are. What do you mean like hermit gifts or like what? Like that doesn't make any sense. So start to look at what are the things that when you're alone and you're doing them and you get disturbed or somebody interrupts you and what are the like in that it makes you really kind of frustrated or angry.
Yeah.
What are those things? What is it that you're doing that when you get interrupted and you get kind of frustrated or angry or bitter about it, what is it that you're doing? Most likely, that's one of your gifts. And most likely, it's really easy for you. And so it could be something that you look at and you're like, yeah, but that's not really something I'm supposed to do for people or put out into the world, or people wouldn't pay for it. And not that like every gift that we have, we're supposed to monetize. Nothing like I'm not saying you like
Yeah.
are meant to monetize these, but I'm also saying that they don't come easy to everybody else.
Mhm.
So just because you're saying like, oh, well, it's just so easy, like anybody can do it. No, not everybody can communicate with animals. Although I do believe people can.
Yeah.
but it comes easier for some than it does for others. And then there's a huge trust component that comes with these gifts too, right? Of believing that we can do it and then leaning into them. And the more we lean into them, the more we become self-absorbed in them, the more that they really like get developed and come even more to the surface. So that's just like, I guess, a little exercise if you have a 2 in
I
your
love it.
like.
How many personality numbers are there?
So there's a potential for 12 different 12 different profiles.
Okay.
And then there's numbers from 1 through 6. So there's 12 different pairings of them
Of numbers.
that can come to the surface. So you're 2-4.
Yeah.
And you're 4, which you're like, you love people, right?
Yeah, it's like such an interesting
Yeah,
contrast to me. And people have
totally.
said to me before, you're so outgoing and you such an extrovert. And I'm like, no. And then other days I am.
But that's also, so the 2, right? The first number is how you see yourself. The
Okay.
second number is how others see you. So others don't necessarily see your hermit or your 2.
Yeah.
They see the 4, and the 4 is all about their people. The 4 is all about cultivating relationships with your people. 4s don't want to go network with rando people.
No.
Not their jam. Strangers, not their jam.
No.
Their people, yes. They want to pour all of their energy into their people.
That's where I feel like I have energy now that you say that. Like I get built up, like,
yeah.
And it doesn't even mean, maybe this will make sense to you, but I don't even have to know you. But if you're my people, then it's really easy. And I am really energetic in those situations.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because it's all about your people. You also have the love of communion with your tribe, which is like this 4 on steroids, right? Like it's wanting to be with your people, pouring yourself into it. And it's important to recognize this because the person I learned from for human design, Jenna Zoe, I love her so much.
Yeah.
The example she gives with this gate is that most likely, we don't know this for sure, but most likely the founder of CrossFit has this gate because he brought community to something that didn't really have community in the same way before CrossFit came on the whatever surface thing.
To us, yeah.
Came on the whatever.
Yes.
So it's really important to understand, not only do you have this 4 and you're all about cultivating your relationships, but having your like communion with your tribe, your soul family is so important. And you're going to bring something to that, or you're going to create it in a way that is specific to you and that is able to bring all of these things together that is specific to you and what you love and how you're able to bring your 2 gifts, most likely, to them, to your tribe, to your people, and how you can cultivate those relationships, and that these things just come really natural to you, that you're meant to lean into, but don't come natural to everybody else or to, I do not have a 4 in my profile, and I do not have 37 as a gate. That's something that I have.
Yeah.
So creating groups of people and creating that communion and that tribe and that like cultivating those feelings aren't going to be super natural for me. Right. And they're probably not things that I need to lean into because it's just not part of my design.
And
There's
it would
other stuff for me to lean
like
into.
unnatural for you, so it probably wouldn't bring joy is what I'm assuming.
Exactly. And so it's finding the things that like that come easy to us, which are probably a lot of the gates that we have too, and lean into those and stop trying to lean into the things that we don't have and that people have told us that we're supposed to have.
Yeah.
They probably have. And great. Like, yes, they need to lean into that, but it doesn't mean I need to lean into that, because the more that I do, the more it's probably going to lead to my not self theme, which the not self theme is right. It's the kind of signpost. It's the feelings we get when we're not in design, when we're not in alignment. So for you, it's frustration, which can show up a lot of different ways. For me, it's bitterness. For a reflector, it's disappointment. For manifestors, it's anger. And then for generators, it's frustration too. And all of these things can show up in lots of different ways too, but just to give you kind of like an understanding. Yeah. So that's how those things show up.
Emma has a PDF. Go download it.
Yeah, if you
forgot all about it right now. We should tell them where it is, actually. totally just thought of it because it is a good place to start, just to like, so even like when you're saying gates, those are the bars, I believe, that I see in my chart. Is that what the gates are? Or is that the numbers?
So, yeah, if you look at a chart, there's 64 numbers within the centers.
Right.
And then when it's kind of hard to explain without like a visual, but when there's a number lit up in like a line that's going halfway to another
Right.
center,
Yeah.
that's a gate by itself.
Oh, okay.
And then when there's a full line connecting two centers together, that's considered a channel because you have the gates on either side of that center that's
so
connecting them together.
Yeah.
So you have both of those gates, but it also creates a channel, and the channel also means something. So before we got on, right? I was like,
there's so much information, you guys.
There's so much. And right, like before we got on, we were talking about how like I've stressed before, and I think I stressed before we got on again. I'm like, you have to do what you love. Like for you specifically, it's so important because you have a channel that's called Mastering Life by Doing What You Love.
Love it. That's what I'll put. I was showing her that I found a blank canvas this morning in my room, and that's what I think I'm going to put on it, because, and maybe everybody should do that with like their main theme, the thing that's most important to them, just so that it is in the forefront, so that we constantly remember to live that way when we've been conditioned to not live that way.
Exactly. And we've been conditioned to should and supposed to, and you're supposed to live life in this way. And it's like, no, like you're supposed to do what you love.
Yes.
That's what gives you energy. That's what makes you very sparkly. It's what makes you super magnetic and charismatic and pulls people to you, pulls opportunities to you, pulls all the things to you to then respond to, of saying yes or no. And right? Like if we're trying to up level, the universe is going to send you a pretty juicy no, most likely, to say like, are you sure you want to? Like, you're saying that you're ready to like welcome this thing into your life.
Yeah.
But will you actually do it? Like when push comes to shove, are you going to make the decision that's for your highest good, or are you going to fall back into the thing that feels comfortable? And also what we were talking
Comfort is easy, guys.
Yeah.
Comfort is easy.
Right?
Yeah.
And before we got on, we were also talking about how the scariest thing for a manifesting generator and a generator is to do nothing. And so when you clear out all of those no's and you find, well, wait, but I have nothing to do. I need to do something. This feels really uncomfortable. Like you'll grab for a no.
Yeah.
Because even though you don't feel good doing it and you know you shouldn't do it or whatever, it still feels better than doing nothing.
And so I really want everybody to just pause and listen to that you will grab for a no, almost like it's the cup analogy of like you have an empty cup. And so you're like, I can't be without, I have to fill this cup even with a no.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the universe will test you immensely there, or I have definitely been tested immensely there.
Totally. And so, right, we were talking about how we've both told clients to create a list of what are the things that you love doing.
Yeah.
They don't have to be big things. It can be, taking a walk or snuggling with your pet or coloring or whatever, meditating, journaling, whatever the thing is for you.
Yeah.
Create that list so that when you have that space, when you have the nothing to do, instead of reaching for that no, you can reach for the yes.
Yeah.
That maybe feels uncomfortable because you're like, but it's the middle of the workday. I'm supposed to be doing this other, like I'm supposed to be working. I'm not supposed to be playing. But if I'm not doing this, then I'm going to go do this no. If you do the yes and you play instead of doing the no, you're going to pull so much more magic to you. And
so I love that. That has been a huge resistance piece for me, because it's like, well, you can't possibly play that often. conditioning, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Like, that's not logical. That's not how you grow a business. That's not how, like, all of these things
Yeah.
pop up for you. It's been a very fascinating few months with that.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to talk about conditioning, if we talk about a projector,
Yeah.
projectors are meant to wait for the invitation, right? So
Yes.
if you're in a business as a projector and you're like, okay, I want to be on podcasts and I like want to do this and I want to teach workshops and like I want to do all these things. And you're like, but the only other thing I'll say here before I get into it, because I don't want people to think like, oh, well, I have to wait for this like specific
Right.
invitation. You can get what I call like the universe's invitation. If you feel super inspired as a projector to like reach out to somebody to be on their podcast or to collaborate with them, do it. The universe is telling you to do it. They're inviting you into that. So do it. But if you're not feeling that, then go back into this. So if I like want to be, I mean, I do, I want to be on podcasts. I want to teach things. I want to be like doing trainings and stuff for people because there's so much value in this, but it can be so difficult to understand just like looking at it or running your chart and you're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, this is weird looking and whatever.
Things.
And so for me, I was like, okay, but a lot of people tell you that you're supposed to do it this way. You need to pitch a bunch of people in order to get on their podcast and you have to do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust that the more that I recognize myself for what I can do and what I do and the gifts and abilities that I have, that the more invitations that are going to come to me without me having to go out and get them, right?
Yes.
And the last week or two, I have gotten more invitations to podcasts and to trainings.
You must have surrendered.
Totally.
Because I've thought about it with you for months.
Yeah.
And it was until finally last week, or maybe even early, whenever that was, last week, I think, that I was like, I need to just talk to her about this.
Exactly. Right. And so it's just learning that the more that we can surrender into how we're meant to be in trust and do the work for and on ourselves, everything else kind of takes care of itself. But there's so much like gripping that can happen of like, oh, but I don't want to, like, cause like I really need to make money and it needs to look like this and da 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 da. But the more we can let go and just like go with the flow, like go with the river and just say, okay, like I'm gonna trust myself. I'm going to recognize, which there's so much work for a projector to just like truly recognize themselves for what they can do. But then to see what can happen after, I was just like floored. I was like getting all these, like I was getting, Vox messages from people and DMs from people. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, where is all this coming from? All quote unquote, all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, got it. Like, no, I'm just finally leaning into it.
Yes.
And showing the universe. And there's been some tests that I had to pass.
I bet.
Of like, no, like this is actually really what I can do and what I want to do. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So
that is so beautiful. Like, I just love the surrender. I think there is a book called The Surrender Experiment, isn't there?
Yeah.
I should read it, actually. Is it good? Have you read it?
Good. Yeah, I listened to it and it's.
I feel like you probably told me about it, but I feel like that's what life is like literally learning to surrender, learning to surrender, learning to surrender. And if you take the human design piece and then uncondition, decondition, whatever word you want to use, and just continue to surrender, life is super, super magical.
Yeah. And life is meant to be easy and to be flowy, but that's scary, right? Like, but no, it's not, for sure it can't be this easy, right? Like then we start complicating it. Then we start getting in our head about it. Then we start like putting obstacles in our place, reaching for the nose or starting to initiate stuff or whatever the thing is to be like, but for sure this can't be it, right? Like it's supposed to be harder. Like I can't make money doing something that like comes so easy to me, or that I'm only spending a certain amount of hours on a day or whatever. And it's like, oh, stop complicating it. And I say this to everybody as much as I'm saying it to myself. Of like, stop complicating it and just let it be easy. And I swear Amber says that all the time. just let it be easy. Like stop making it hard.
Yes. Why do we make it hard? So that is literally behind me of reminding myself daily of it can be easy. It can. Why do we do this?
Seriously.
And it is, I think it is a conditioned piece
Oh,
personally. They're just
totally.
having
Thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Generational. If we go back to like, even the Egyptians and like building the pyramids, like everything had to be hard and like, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so for me, like learning who I am and what I'm meant to lean into, especially as a projector and it being so different than the normal workday or the normal job or whatever, has been so difficult.
I bet.
But also so helpful because now I feel so much better now than I did, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in a corporate job, making way more money than I'm making right now.
Yep.
But also there being a ceiling for how much I can make there. Whereas here, there's no ceiling. It's just a matter, the ceiling is me. It's
I feel like the ceiling is you surrendering deeper and
totally.
deeper into being a projector, like to your chart, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's building that self-worth, right? For what I feel worthy of receiving and deserving of receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially in this new way, right? I have a very different level of self-worth of what I feel like I can receive monetarily in a corporate job for whatever I was doing versus in my own business and what I'm doing. And so it's relearning and going from one mindset to a completely different one that is so foreign and not like one that's been taught from a beginning or from in school or anything like that. But the more that I'm able to build that worth within this part of my mindset for this specific situation, the more that things become easy.
Yes.
The more that things flow. And so it's all about the work that we're willing to do and put into of not only surrendering and leaning into our chart, but also the extra work of making sure that, we are deconditioning from all the beliefs and all the things that we have told ourselves or been told or witnessed or modeled to us that this is how it has to be in order to get XYZ. And it's like,
it's so different. And I think it will be like money mindset is obviously something that's super fascinating to me. And I could go on and on about, but working corporate versus working as an entrepreneur is such a different mindset. And we are only taught, in my opinion, the corporate way. And that's probably what we saw mostly. Like my grandpa was a very successful entrepreneur, but for the most part, it was a corporate world that I was surrounded with. And then, when you come into entrepreneurship, I think you almost think that you need to work so hard to be worthy of any money that's coming in. And if you're not, then we could go on for hours about that. But I think it's an important piece to look at because I was so excited to see how that just like escalates so quickly for you over here because as you feel more worthy of it.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, I could for sure talk about this for like so long.
We'll do another one in like a couple months about this.
Like there's so much I know as like growing up, the different entrepreneurial type of things that I saw was that you had to work so hard. It had to be hard before it could be easy. And it had to be super hard, like super long hours and no money and like gripping and grasping and like all this stuff in order for it to work. And it's like, like I didn't want that. I never once saw myself as being an entrepreneur because I'm like, well, that sounds terrible. And I don't want to do that. I don't have the energy for that. So no thanks. Like I'm good. But then finding myself, in this position of like, well, no, but you're actually supposed to do this. So like, you're going to need to lean into this and then learning this whole different way of doing it, but having to unlearn and reprogram my brain that that's not the way to success for me.
Yes. I think it is for a lot of us in the entrepreneur world. I think that's quite a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
and just like accepting and tapping into that and growing into that. Like it's just part of the process. It's part of the journey. And yeah, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We could
Thank
go
you.
on for hours. Absolutely. And we'll do another one at another time. So
Yeah.
send questions that what you want to hear about, because I would be all over doing this again for sure. And Emma is just such a wealth of knowledge. Please go follow her. Emma, where do we find you? Instagram?
Instagram,
What are you called?
it's at EmmaJ04.
Emma J04. Okay.
My website, which I didn't answer your question about the one pagers.
Right.
So my website is connected-consciousness.com. And then
Mhm.
if there you can sign up for my email, which when you sign up, you get an email with all 5 energy type PDF one pagers. So little bits and pieces of information on there about each of the types. It definitely doesn't go into all the information because, right, like I can speak
So much.
30 minutes on just one.
Yeah.
And then also if you go to my Instagram, not that long ago, I think in July-ish,
Yeah.
beginning of July, I did a series of 10 to 15 minute videos on each of the types. So
Yeah.
you can check those out there too.
Just click her IGTV and it comes up so nicely
Yeah.
when you click on that button. And I've watched those a few times because I find it so fascinating. But what is fascinating is I haven't ran my children yet. So I need to run my children so that I know what I'm actually, I know.
What?
I want to run everybody in my life and I haven't.
I
Yeah.
can't believe you haven't done your kids yet.
Right?
I can
Or
explain
my husband.
so
I don't
much.
even know what my husband is and I need to.
Please run them and then let me
I'll
know
let you
because
know.
I'm so
Okay. I
interested.
will do that.
Yeah.
Reach out to Emma, you guys. She's absolutely amazing. And thanks for spending all this time with us. We super appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I would love to do another. There's so much more we can dive into. So I'm just so grateful. Hopefully this was helpful for people. So
I'm sure it was.